matter. So get that on your calendar, and I promise we'll continue to work out these bugs and get through this and make this happen. So with that, I think we will, I'd like to thank NAR. They did work with us in helping to put this together, and we decided to co-host an event so that we could try to sort through as much of the noise as possible and have you guys, there's webinars everywhere, happening all the time everywhere, so if we can bring it more to one place that you can get more of the information in one spot. So with that, I am going to go right to our first set of panelists, which I believe are all on there. If I can get a yes from everybody, our three panelists being Caitlin McClory from Redfin, Bill Fowler with Compass, and Craig Cheatham with the Realty Alliance. Do I have all three of you?
Here.
Hi.
Here one. And do I have Craig? I think I heard Bill and did I get that one? Okay, well, we will move forward. I'll work on getting that, make sure we get Craig on here, bring his thoughts in. But Caitlin, why don't we start with you? If you could give us a little bit, we'd asked you to come on today and tell us basically what are you looking at? How can you help MLSs step back and think about what is it that their brokers and agents, their customers are thinking about right now? What are you considering? What's your biggest challenges? And just what do you want MLSs to know a little bit about as they start navigating this and helping to best support their members?
Thanks, Danae. I think the biggest thing here is that we're all working towards the same goal. We want to keep our agents and our clients healthy and calm. And part of the way that we're working to do that is virtual options. So the asks that we have from our MLS partners is to allow us to promote those virtual options, whether it's virtual open houses or virtual tours. I know that Flex already has opted to create a virtual tour link or a virtual open house link within their system. CoreLogic is also doing something similar. That to us is a progressive step and a way to help your clients, your members, help the consumer. These are crazy, unprecedented times, and if we're working together towards solutions, like I said, we all have the same end goal here. And so that's really what we're pushing for, is just collaboration and getting rid of the politics of everything and really just working towards solutions that are virtual based.
Excellent. Bill.
Yeah, same thing. There are a lot of really scared people out there. And so I think everybody on this call is in a leadership position of some kind, and we're all having to have the conversations about where we are, where we're headed, what we can do individually to help kind of mitigate this. I mean, panic, number one, fear is definitely palpable on these calls. You know, I think Caitlin and I probably have, our days are full of conference calls with either groups of agents, our sales managers across the country, headquarters, all kind of reverberating the same thing, which is this isn't going to last forever. We don't need to freak out and start doing things that are going to be to do damage to us in the long term. But we do have to think creatively and kind of put whatever was on our table a month ago aside, and this is all hands on deck. And I want to just start with saying I really appreciate what CMLS is doing, is facilitating these kind of conversations that Caitlin and I try to have individually all day long, and it's very difficult to reach this many people at one time. So I really appreciate you guys doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Really appreciate that, and trying to work to support the industry. So you guys contributing to the conversation, I definitely appreciate that. And I think, Craig, you are on and ready to share some thoughts from the Realty Alliance and what you're hearing from your members. I think you might still. You're muted. Gotta love technology when it works well and when it doesn't. It makes for a good Friday. Let's see. I just got a message. It sounds like you're there, but all right. Well, we will. We'll come back to Craig as soon as text me if you're having any issues, Craig, and I'll see what we can do. Oh, I see you on there.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yes.
now?
Woohoo! Another win.
Great. Well,
all right. Thank you, Craig.
Danae and everybody, we all know working together, brokers and MLSs has always been key, never more so than now. And so far, in our experience, we are finding our MLSs to be proactive, creative, flexible, and responsive. We are been really impressed with everything we've seen so far, but we know things are changing rapidly, and there's a lot more work ahead there. In terms of the mindset of the brokers right now, job one is cash flow, keeping enough cash to get things going. So they are working to cut every expense they can, to delay every payment they can, and to renegotiate every obligation they can. That really is job one for them. The goal is to not run out of money, to be able to make payroll, keep things moving. This is an unprecedented crisis. We do believe there will be an end to it, and brokers are just trying to still be alive. A lot of that is personnel cuts. They're very, very painful, but it's something that we're hoping really is brief. Communication is another thing at the top of the list of the broker. If you're wondering about their mindset, communicating and educating, that's both their sales force and their consumers. A lot of questions, need a lot of support, a lot of reassurance right now. We are having virtual sales meetings, actually having the best attendance we've ever had at these. People are hungry for information, hungry to know what to do and what not to do. So up to this point, we've actually been surprised how much business has been able to be done, but those were things that were in the pipeline before. I've been really thrilled that we've been able to get things across the goal line, but are very worried about the days and the weeks ahead in terms of getting things back in the pipeline. And we're especially worried on the financing front. The bill that is working its way through that we hope will pass still. There's so many layers when it comes to the mortgage industry. You can even see CNN today even featured the issue about how the mortgage market may come to a screeching halt. So that's a big deal on our minds for the weeks ahead. We could do a whole webinar on what brokers are thinking about, what they're going through right now, but this is not that webinar. And I think everybody will be able to kind of learn that when you visit with your brokers. So, you know, what we have are suggestions we garnered from various markets. None of these are demands. None of these necessarily fit everybody. But as you prepare to talk with brokers in your market, maybe make some notes on these. They are intended to spark the thinking of you and your team about the kinds of things brokers are thinking about when it comes to MLS. So we hope these will be specific enough to be helpful, but general enough that you don't feel like this is something that everyone's being asked to do. Elephant in the room.
So Craig, on that, for clarification, so you did reach out to your members, and this is kind of some ideas or suggestions that came back to you?
Right. I never
okay.
pontificate on my own. I always speak their words. So these are things coming from brokers around the country. And the first one is one, I don't want you to tune me out after you hear this first one, but you heard their number one issue right now is cash being so tight. So as you talk with your brokers, know that as they're cutting, delaying, renegotiating, that really is job one. And if you think they're asking for any kind of forbearance on fees or penalties and things like that, it's not that they're not being creative, that they haven't thought this through, they're taking the easy route. That just really is, cash is a big deal. So They don't imagine that you're sitting on a pile of cash and all of that, but you know, reserves are for times like these. And so maybe think through what that looks like in your market and just know cash is number one on their list. So if you're able to do that and give any kind of relief or delay or anything like that, we do expect to come out on the other side. So maybe it's just temporary, but just be mindful of their cash flow. That would great thing to do is to at least display that sensitivity there. And certainly any fines that are tied to lack of timeliness or getting a listing showable when the seller changes her mind, things like that. Those are realities now, so some understanding there. I think their preference is for the MLS not to ban showings or open houses, not at the MLS level. You know, let the various authorities, whether that local, state, national, whomever, let them decide those things and don't necessarily control at the MLS level. Not disabling showing time or other scheduling services. We'll need those again soon. So don't undo anything that we might need to redo. And if you are disabling open houses, maybe look at the search too and make it impossible to search for open houses or properties that have open houses. Don't remove the open house fields at this point would be our thing. I'm not going to touch days on market at the moment. I figure we'll come back to that. But really, this is a good time to look at rules and status categories to see if there are any rules or policies that might be getting in the way of practicing real estate remotely. I'm not sure we've really looked at our rules and statuses in that light, or maybe some things that you think could be added to facilitate real estate being carried out even more smoothly remotely. I think this is a great time to look at that, and without changing the way we do business, there might be some things you can do and be spotting. So that would be a great help to your participant brokers. Now, this is jumping way ahead, Danae, but let's make sure we're prepared in the event that things go gangbusters after this is over. You know, to see can your team, can your structure, can your processes deal successfully with the potential for the busiest summer ever. So, you know, we're thinking optimistically. We wouldn't be in real estate if we weren't optimists to the core.
I love that last piece for sure, putting the optimism on it of, I think we could all use that right now for sure. Let the broker and their agents communicate directly with the public. You know, I am getting emails from every individual I've ever done business with in my life telling me what they're doing about COVID-19. Not helpful, but let's let the participants talk with the public and do that communication and not let the MLS do that. That's probably the broker preference across the board. Look at any limits on a field that would be, you know, temporarily off the market or anything along those lines to lengthen that or take that out. And of course, they're concerned about a temporary status like that not accruing market time. Look at rules. If you have any rules along the lines of if it can't be shown for X number of days, it must be withdrawn. Some of our sellers still want this thing marketed, but they're not quite at a point where they're ready for it to be shown. So look at those kind of rules. If it can't be shown for X days, it must be withdrawn. Excellent. That's the kind of thing that we'd love to have you look at this point. Property status. So really looking at, yeah, I was going to say, Caitlin has a look on her face of an addition. I can see that.
No, I think Craig's definitely has a lot of ideas that the brokerage community shares. And just talking about showings while in active status, I know that there, especially with the clear cooperation policy rules, if a listing is in the active status, it has to be shown. But due to some of these shelter-in-place orders and things that are occurring in the market, whether or not a seller wants folks walking through their home, there is a solution that a few MLSs have adopted. MLS PIN comes to top of mind, where they say if a listing is in an active status, it must be available for either a virtual or a physical showing. So that just small little change of adding in virtual there in addition to the physical for showing is a way to continue to market the property, keep it in an active status, abide by rules, but have it be a little bit more flexible. Sorry, Craig, for jumping in there.
Oh, that's okay. Another one, I'm assuming maybe property status or showing procedures will reflect specific local restrictions, like Pennsylvania right now, unless something has changed this morning. They do not allow physical showings. They are really locked down. So assuming those, the property status or showing procedures might allow there to be something there that explains the local restrictions. Another one, this is big for some, not a big deal for others, depending where it's happening, but except in the most extreme circumstances, agents in many of our markets are still out in the field. They're complying with social distancing, taking all the right precautions, but they're using key boxes, lock boxes. They're needing at the doors of their MLS not to be locked. Obviously, no one's asking anybody to do anything unsafe, but we're able to get takeout food and all kinds of things following proper procedures. But business critical items for a lot of these agents and brokers, if the MLS office is totally closed and locked, that's a real problem in trying to keep everything moving. So if you can figure out how to make that work with various procedures, that would be much appreciated in markets like Memphis and others. If we have restrictions in the same marketplace that differ in the same MLS where various municipalities or others are doing things differently, that would be helpful for the MLS to track and inform their members. Otherwise, we can probably get our information from other sources that will be more up to date, via the state health department or whomever. It does kind of bring up the sticky issue of whether performing duties that are not allowed by various authorities at the moment should be treated as ethics violations and enforced. So that's kind of tough. Everyone wants you to go after their peer, I suppose, but be thinking about those kind of reminders in your marketplace where that applies.
Excellent.
I think that Caitlin mentioned the virtual open house. That is a big deal. We love that in the public remarks, so it shows up on the portals. Obviously, adding a field, Caitlin's already talked about.
Sure.
And I think forms are probably something that's coming our way. We hate
and
to
Craig,
have
just really quick before
yeah.
you go on that, I think Bill, you said you had something you wanted to add. It seems like you maybe got something. You paused something.
Well, and I appreciate Craig's list, and I didn't come prepared with a punch list like that, but I do think it's important for us to have a list of things that we can all be considering. I wanted to make sure that I got this in. I spend most of my time talking to the Bay Area and New York City. And for anybody who's listening that is not currently in a shelter in place or this is kind of a wait and see kind of attitude, I would encourage you to look at those two markets as a likely next scenario for any major metro. As we look at this punch list of things that we're all considering, the days on market question, the visibility of virtual tours and all those things are obviously very important and are keeping the business going in these two largest markets. But they are things that I think we should, as optimistic as I want to be, I think anybody who's looking seriously at making policy changes could look to those two markets and be sure to call those people and see what they're going through and see what they're doing to help their members, because we may get there. We may be 3 weeks or a month behind those two markets, and I don't want to, instill any fear in anybody, but I think we have to have an emergency break glass kind of scenario with some of these policy changes. So nobody wants to monkey with data. Nobody wants to do anything that we'll have to undo later on. But there's worst case scenario things going on in those two places, and I think we need to pay attention to that. So, Craig, I mean, to your list, I love it, and I think maybe it's something that we as a group of brokers can get together and just say, if we had a wish list, it would look like this. Those things are not going to apply to every market. Yeah. They're not going to apply to every market, but they might, and it's kind of like, okay, what can we do, and what are some suggestions that our brokers have already ratified, so we don't have to guess.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. And so, Craig, I'd love if you would definitely send me that, because what we're working on, and I don't know if we can move to the screen, Kelly, I think you're taking the PowerPoint, if that's up there, but CMLS is putting together a resource page to collect all this stuff. So as all of you are doing things and messaging to members or whatever it is that you're working on, we will be collecting those things and putting them up as much as you're sending us and trying to just put it all in one place, all MLS specific stuff. So let's get on that one. And then I think we are at a place where we can move to, I want to let you guys know too, my staff, you've been seeing me, my staff is working in the background. I think there's something with Zoom today because our account does say we can have 1,000 people, but it's cutting us off at 100. So if anyone's pinging, know that we are recording this. We probably should do this topic again because we had almost 400 people registered. So I'm feeling really bad that they're not on, but we can still capture the great information and have some good conversations. But I would like to move over to our MLS executives, and I would say also if any other thoughts or additions, go ahead and ask. And
Danae,
before we
can I
run
get
into,
One
go ahead, Caitlin. Sure.
One final thought, and it's what Craig was, I think, about to say next, is that form addendums for COVID-19 have been coming in quickly and consistently. So thank you everyone who's been on that. And then I would also just encourage our MLS friends to push their states to become online notaries. Again, to enhance those virtual options for broker members. But that's all I wanted to say. Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's great. Feel free to chime in if any other additions. So, okay, so yeah, I'm getting the note that I think Zoom is having an issue. I kept having nightmares last night. I'm like, I hope we don't break Zoom, but I don't think we broke Zoom. I think kind of this whole situation is causing all these challenges. So with that, if I could have, we did skip through some screens. We did ask our MLS platform vendors to send us what it is they're doing, and we did have a couple who sent those in. And so really quick, before we go to the MLS execs, Kelly, if you can go back, we did get Core FBS sent us some stuff of what they're offering. And I know Michael just did a blog post he sent to me the other day of what they're offering to help in some of these situations. And then also, and we'll put all this stuff on the resource page. And then also CoreLogic had sent us some of their options that they're putting together. So I think the big summary is that everybody is working extremely hard to continue to make the market work and support each other. And so the more we can share that information and communicate, it's so important right now. All right, Kelly, so if you can go to the next one and show us our MLS execs. I think I have all of them here today. If we can confirm that, and I can hear from Mr. Matt, Brian, and Rebecca.
Present.
I can see Matt's face.
I'm
Hello.
here.
Brian.
Hello.
And Rebecca, yay, we have panelists. All right, awesome. Well, if I could have each of you start by introducing yourselves more, we know you, but tell me where your markets are. What are you experiencing? Are you a shelter in place? Is it business as usual? And if you've done any changes so far.
Rebecca, start us off.
Okay, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Jensen with MRED out of the greater Chicagoland area. And Illinois is under a protective order shelter in place. However, we do have real estate listed as an essential business service. And our order from our governor actually used the language, something to the effect that those businesses that are deemed essential are encouraged to stay open. And I had that reiterated to me by one of our senators that called me to make sure that we were trying to get as normal as possible.
Crunchy. There's peanut butter open.
I don't know. You guys.
And Lisa, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. So anyway, real estate is essential. However, we are definitely telling people to talk to their homeowners and their legal counsel to see whether or not they should be doing things like doing open houses or holding showings. MRED's board met, it's crazy, but it was a week ago, last Friday. We had an emergency board meeting and we decided to just during the time that Illinois is in a shelter in place, suspend our fine policy with respect to requiring showings on active listings. So we do have a rule that says that, active listings must be shown, but we're just not going to fine for it as people try to figure out how to do those showings. Our system allows multiple virtual tours. So we know that those have been utilized, and we have unlimited photos, so we know that those are being utilized. We did discuss whether or not we should postpone or temporarily delay days on market, but we are not doing anything like that. And I appreciate the statement that CMLS issued earlier in that email today. That was definitely in keeping with not only MRED's board of managers, but also our associations, who said that it was very reminiscent of the 2007-2008 timeframe, where they were asked to essentially manipulate market data, and that's the way they felt about it. And so we decided not to. So on our active listings, days on market will calculate. However, we do have a temporarily off market status that's similar to the RESO status of hold. And that status does not calculate days on market towards the market time. And I think this is a good opportunity for MRED to look at all of our market time statistics. And so we are already talking about how to just add more clarity to the market time, as opposed to try to manipulate it or pause it. Because one of the factors in that, of course, is that our data goes out to hundreds of websites, and a lot of those websites calculate their own days on website sort of metric. And so we didn't want to do anything that would essentially obfuscate the market time. Our state did just pass the virtual notary law, especially during the shelter in place. So that was something that was welcome news today. We have had reports that the government recorder's office is not fully functional. And so that is putting some pressure on title agencies. So that'll be interesting to monitor. I have also already had requests from our assessor's office to maybe redo our assessments. I haven't returned that phone call because that came like 5 minutes before this webinar. And then we've also been told that Zillow is looking at having URLs for those virtual showings be accessible through their remarks. But the problem with us is that we have already filtered those out of our public remarks. And so it's not a matter of just flipping a switch to allow those URLs to show. So right now our guidance is to put any sort of URL in the broker remarks, which has been allowed all along. So that's kicking you off, and maybe I'll throw it to Matt then.
Great, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca. Here in Central Arizona, as a general statement, we are still operating fairly normally, in my opinion. We have moved most of our staff to working off-site, but all of our support center locations remain open at this time. There is no shelter in place anywhere in Arizona. We have approximately 600 and change, low 600 cases of COVID-19 out of a population of 7.4 million. So Arizona has fared well thus far, and as a result, we are remaining fully functionable and fully open for our subscribers and our members. The governor did issue a declaration and has deemed real estate an essential service, along with title, appraisal, and others. And our recorder that carries the bulk of the transactions that we do historically has been 95% e-recordings, so we don't have any backup in the recorder's office at all at this point. We see thousands of new listings coming on the market in the last 10 days, and we see hundreds, if not thousands, of transactions occurring in properties going under contract. So I'm pleased to say that things are moving forward in Arizona, but we certainly are operating differently. In our support centers, we've gone to an appointment-only methodology, and keys and key boxes are important transactions for our subscribers. We've made that event a no-touch transaction that they have to pre-order, and from the time they walk in to pick it up and walk back out is under 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes now. And these are efficiencies that I hope we've learned something from, and we will continue to use in the weeks, months, and years ahead. As Craig Cheatham said, I hope for the best summer we've ever known. And in that, I think we need to be more efficient, and we have that in our eyes, in our sights.
I like that. I do want to compliment you on your wardrobe selection today, Matt.
Thank you.
Very nice. All right, Brian.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks today. Brian Donnellan, Bright MLS in the Mid-Atlantic. We have a specific set of challenges. We're in 6 states and DC. I will tell you that the market is all over the place. And as a matter of fact, we don't get into the business of telling people what it is they can do and not do, because it is changing all the time. It varies by state. We do know that Pennsylvania is pretty much shut down in shelter in place. I think New Jersey is. Other places in Maryland and DC and Virginia, the business is actually thriving quite well. There's a lot of activity happening. We have seen over the past week, where initially listings were coming off and going into, or coming off the market as active. We've seen that that's sort of settled now, that's not changing day to day anymore. A couple of other conversations that we're having. We thought about Dom a little bit over 2 weeks ago when we saw this happening, when we saw things really begin to build. And the executive committee meets several times a week to discuss this. And we developed a solution that would pause Dom, but we haven't done it. And we haven't done it for several reasons thus far. When we're looking at that, the question is what can we do to keep the market open and thriving? And we don't have any evidence right now that actually changing Dom would do that. It's great that Silicon Valley and New York are doing it, and maybe we can learn if it actually does change the market and change the mentality of folks out there. So what it is we're doing is we're trying to find other ways, and many of the ways that folks have talked about, virtual tours, relaxing a lot of the rules that we have, even using statuses that typically aren't used for marketing. We call it temp off. A lot of people have pause or hold or a variety of different things. And trying to help brokers and agents figure out ways to use these statuses as opposed to large scale changing of DOM and a variety of other different things. And I think it was already mentioned, DOM is being calculated differently all over the place, and to temporarily change that now, we don't know that it's worth the benefit of confusing everybody later. We're not worried about the data integrity. Our solution that we've come up with actually is outside of that. So we'll always know what the real data is, but we haven't done that yet. We have been working with all the third-party folks out there, and I would suggest that everybody look into it right now. Because when you put certain things, for example, in Zillow, it would get stripped out. So knowing how to actually put those links in the public remarks will keep those things in there. So
Ooh. Brian, I think you got muted there.
Sorry, our job is to keep the market fluid, open, and moving. And when we look at showings, when we look at all these other different things, those are the broker's decisions for us in our market, given number one, that the market's so different, whether in Pennsylvania or Virginia, but just that we want to give the tools and the brokers then decide what it is that they want to do. So showings, we have not stopped those. We have encouraged a variety of different things. We have shown other tools that they can use, the communications that go out daily. So our job is to try to keep this market as fluid as possible. We're meeting and trying to understand if anything changes day to day that we have to react to. But at this point, it's moving, it's different across the whole footprint, but we'll be able to react to whatever comes down the road.
Excellent. I think you all covered days on market. So Brian, you guys are not doing anything to change the calculation of it.
We have,
correct?
we talk about it twice a week, and to date, we have decided to keep it going. That you know, again, if there's something that shows that it actually has an impact on the market, I think the executive committee will consider it differently. But I don't think we have that yet. I think we're still in the early stages of this. And again, we're going to try to point brokers and agents to other areas such as temp off and some of the other areas to begin working with their clients as opposed to changing days on market.
And just to make sure, Rebecca did reference it when she was talking. MLS did send out an email this morning talking about our guidance that we're recommending not altering it, and that the core basis of the MLS is to ensure that we have that consistent data. And so if you didn't get that, please let me know. Send something to info@CMLS, and we'll absolutely get you the information and a couple of topics that we did cover where we're giving guidance to the industry of what we believe is the best path forward. So we talked a little bit about the days on market. Rebecca, will you share about the different statuses? I did talk to you a little bit yesterday about this, of making sure, Brian mentioned some of the other statuses with your, as chair of RESO, just talking about if you were going to do something and addressing what do they want to be looking at using for those statuses?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And I think that you had a link in that email that you sent out to the RESO status document. So again, thank you for sending that out. And kind of the context behind that is that I've talked to some MLSs that were talking about what it looked like if you created a new status for listings just for this time period. And this is just me, Rebecca, talking. I'm not talking on behalf of RESO, that just to make that clear, but I personally wouldn't recommend it. I would say look at the RESO status and look at what other MLSs are doing, and just remember that you know, your brokers have to figure out in a lot of areas what multiple MLSs are doing within that marketplace. And so if you're doing something unique, while it might be very well intended, it might have the unintended consequence of complicating life for some of your brokers. And so that was the whole reason that RESO wanted to create standardized data and definitions of things such as their statuses, which you can find on the CMLS email. And so my opinion is that I would just either, if you're going to change a status, do it to be in line with the RESO statuses, or otherwise leave your statuses alone. And I totally support the CMLS position on not tinkering with days on market. Like I said, you can clarify days on market, and I think RESO also has a white paper on the different ways that MLSs go about calculating days on market. And so that's something, for example, that MRED is already looking at, just to add more clarity. So what would it look like to count certain, like contract time or available for showing time or things of that nature, to add more clarity. But to try to pause it for a temporary time frame when every market is still different and business is still being absolutely done is inadvisable in my opinion. So.
Thank you, Rebecca. Matt, would you talk a little bit about what you see the impact to the data set overall? So as MLS is the data collection, what happens, what do you see as some of the impacts if we do start making these changes of not using a RESO status that's already exists, or data market?
Certainly.
Alterations or changes?
Certainly. Before I answer that, I just want to compliment Brian and Rebecca, and I want to reinforce what they've said, and that is we should be taking steps to make it easier for our brokers. We should be making decisions, making sure that our brokers have the tools and the understanding and things. And one of the things I think would confuse the broker both now and in the future is if we changed our methodology of days on market all of a sudden. If we pause things, the ability to put that on pause and come back can be challenging. Rebecca and Brian both pointed out that they have solutions that operate a little bit out of. They're not looking at tinkering with their 1 days on market solution, but look at slicing the data a little differently, and days under contract or days this. That's a fine solution where we add more clarity or more data. But where an MLS only has a single or 2 calculations of days on market, the intent to pause it and turn it back on makes a clouded lens to look through history. And that would be a challenge in my opinion.
Thank you. My next question I want to get into, we had a lot on, there's been a lot of questions out on days on market, but I think overall this what I'm hearing from the 3 of you and what CMLS issued is to best not to mess with it, but because we don't want to change the lens that we're looking, but we can, like Rebecca said, look at it different ways coming back.
And hey, Danae, just one comment, and I said this earlier, but I just want to, look, I feel it like we've got a problem looking for a solution. And, you know, again, we have no way of knowing that it'll have an impact on people putting listings on or not. So, you know, it's like, we'll just do it, but what's the impact? We actually don't know. So it seems to me that if that were ultimately the choice, there would be some reason that we were doing it.
Right. And I think what I've heard is that, does it give a little more peace of mind to sellers to not have that accumulating? But then the other side, I've heard it described as real estate professionals can explain we're in a pandemic and to help them do that. But we just need to give them the tools. They're hungry for the information, as Craig and Caitlin and Bill said earlier, like how can we keep continuing to communicate and educate and be partners with our brokers to help get this out there and work through creating different lenses to look at it, but not go after the data itself. The next question, and where we've seen a lot, is about showings and open houses. Obviously, no one wants to promote. Obviously, we need to be responsible real estate. Thank you, HAR, that had a conversation about that yesterday. Responsible real estate and practicing social distancing and all of those safety things. But there is a lot of importance to continue as much as we can to keep our market flowing. And so how are you guys addressing, and what are some of the things you're hearing about to still show properties in a virtual environment, and what's working, what innovations are you seeing, what should MLSs be thinking about to foster this market? Because I think this is an excellent opportunity for our industry to evolve like 10 years in like 3 months, because we've got excellent brain power and creative people. And so let me hear some of your ideas of what you've seen, what you're encouraging, and how you're facilitating or fostering it as an MLS.
I'll jump in real quick.
I'll jump in. You know, again, we've done everything we can to relax the showing rules, you know, the virtual tours, where they're being put. We're trying to develop some technology to put so that folks can see it a little bit easier. You know, it highlights it where they are. So we're going out of our way to try to make this as easy as possible for folks to adjust to what it is. And the reality is, I think that, you know, every time we go through something like this, a little bit of this sticks with us. And it would seem to me that, you know, focusing on the virtual tours and the virtual showings, or whatever you want to call that aspect of this business, probably will stick around a little bit longer even after this event is over. So, you know, looking at where the future might be, we're looking to be a little bit more virtual and have more tools so that people can do this anyway now.
Danae, I agree wholeheartedly with Brian. I am impressed with the creativity of our real estate practitioners, our realtors, and I do hope that these things stick around. FBS, our MLS vendor for our marketplace, implemented a brand new set of features around this concept of virtual open houses. And it's fantastic adaptation of technology to the current situation that has every reason to survive past this process.
From MRED's standpoint, we've created a page off of our website just for the COVID response, and so we can share information about what's happening across the marketplace. And one of the reports that's on there is from Showing Time that they created, which I think covers the entire nation, but then you can also drill it down by state, and then they gave MRED a special report. And there's no question in our market that showings are way, way down. And people that are showing properties are trying to just put in a buffer in between those showings if they're doing it at all. But again, we're not trying to give any sort of legal guidance on that situation. We're absolutely saying that, you know, here's the executive order from the Illinois governor, here's the direction from whether it be the state association or the National Association of Realtors, but at the end of the day, we're just encouraging everybody to talk to their own legal counsel and figure out with their homeowners what's right for them. There has been a lot of discussion about what liability can be there and whether or not agents should put things in the remarks, but I think it's really important to understand that if you're going to start qualifying people coming to a showing, that there could be legal risk with fair housing involved. And so that's not something obviously to take lightly. You can't really base a showing on somebody's health condition. At least that's what I'm being told is not advisable. But again, we're leaving that in the realm of the brokers to figure that out. We do allow, like I said earlier, multiple different media fields and unlimited photos so that there is that virtual. But I mean, realistically, I am hearing that a lot of homeowners, you know, aren't going to necessarily buy a house just based upon a virtual showing. And so a lot of agents that I've talked to are quite frankly waiting to see what happens with the health status in their community. Some of our communities have been harder hit than others. And so this pent up demand will be interesting to watch, but definitely showings and open houses have been impacted. We have less than 300 open houses listing in MRED's platform right now, and that's with over 55,000 active listings. So it's quite a reduction in open houses, but we didn't do anything to take those away from the system or disable them in any manner for our customers.
I was speaking with an MLS exec yesterday who said they had spent a lot of time on the phone with some of their members explaining that just because it's something new and different and you didn't think about doesn't make it wrong. And so kind of like even the marketplace going, well, wait, can we do that? Is that okay? And so I think it's helping to expand the thinking and the approach of not only us as MLS executives and staff, but our members. Like, can we do this? Is this about a different and better way to do it that should survive? Can you guys talk a little bit about, I've heard questions and the different technologies between being able to load virtual tours that I'd call like on demand versus virtual open houses or virtual showings, and how you're addressing the difference. So one's like an on demand versus a live. I'm hearing people doing Facebook Live this Thursday from 3 to 4, and you can come in and ask questions. So how are you guys facilitating? What does that look like, and what's some of the conversations you've had around it?
Well, Danae, I mean, I'll just jump in here. I mean, we're just, again, you know, whatever the technology is, we're just going to try to help them and facilitate the ability to do so. And they're all a little bit different, and they all interact with the different platforms that we have differently. So we're working with everybody just to make it as easy as possible to do it. Those who are more advanced probably has an easier chance of doing it. But again, it's removing some of the rules and the barriers to actually do some of these things.
Okay.
For us, it's encouraging.
Go ahead, Matt.
It's encouraging creativity amongst our agents and making sure that they're still following the rules, but being creative in how they do things and giving more opportunity for creativity. I think the CMLS document that Rebecca mentioned today that was emailed out said it well. We have to practice responsible real estate. We have to have safety and responsibility in that. And if they can find creative options that are responsible, we should encourage it.
Excellent. Any other, before we go to the breakout, where we really want to encourage you guys to continue to ask questions and interact and learn from each other and share what you are doing. Will each of you just go through and say, what's like your one recommended, like your little tidbit to each of your colleagues on the call of what do you want them to consider, or what should they think about, or what's been most helpful for you over the last week or so?
Just one.
Top two.
From Emred's standpoint, I know it sounds cheesy, and it is, but we went back to our core values, and one of those is reliability. And so when we were looking at doing different policy changes, we said, okay, how is this going to impact our reliability going forward? And so it made it kind of easy for us to make some of those decisions when we were talking about whether pausing or changing or hiding fields or creating new fields. We did just see that as a reliable option going forward, because we have to remember that this data isn't just for today's market. It's also so that we can look back and see what actually happened. And it's going to be even more vital going forward in practice. I mean, it's unprecedented time. So it's kind of, in a way, exciting for us to be involved on working together to try to figure out what's happening in different marketplaces so that we can go back and analyze it once things have settled down.
Hey,
Great.
Danae, you know, I think if I had one thing, and then it's going to split out to a couple, it's communication. It's your communication. It's with your board, your executive committee, with your subscribers, with us, with our association owners. And let's not forget, you know, our employees. I mean, these guys are working really hard under different circumstances, being pulled in 100 different ways. So, you know, I think communication is the key thing right now, making sure you got the right amount, the right message to the right people at the right time.
Excellent.
I second and third what Ryan and Rebecca have both added. For me, as I look at this day that we're in, I've never seen MLS more local than it is at this moment. And looking at the local marketplace, whether you have a shelter-in-place order or you don't, and what the local rules are, and I go back to the words that I read this morning from that CMLS email, and that is responsible real estate. How do we encourage safe and responsible real estate in this era of very hyper-local decision-making by mayors, governors, and states? So just be safe out there and make great decisions for your marketplace, because the MLS is a valuable tool that makes the market work.
Awesome. I appreciate that, everyone. That was excellent information. We did have one question come in that talked about 8.0 implementation, clear cooperation. And as I understand it, I do not believe there's an NAR staff on the phone, but my last communication with them, the date is not being extended. And I believe they've produced some guidance on that, and we will try and help get that out. But the last communication I had is it is still a May 1st implementation date. Okay, so now I want to thank all of my panelists, the brokers, Caitlin, Craig, and Bill, Brian, Rebecca, and Matt. And then I would just ask everyone, Kelly, if you can move to the screen that shows the breakouts. We are going to still go into breakouts. The rules in there, we do believe have some facilitators assigned. If you don't want to participate in it, please drop off the phone, because you will get automatically assigned, and we want to try and keep those rooms even. So we'll give that just a minute if you don't want to. But last week we had a lot of people who were very definitely wanted to participate and engage. So we will still put that on there. It is preferred that you have video and mute when you're not speaking, because we're encouraging people to talk, and it just gets a lot, if not. I'm loving all the dings. And then we are asking, they're only successful if you do participate. So please, both ways, make sure you are contributing to the conversation, and then also please make sure you're not capitalizing on the conversation either, and allowing everyone to interact and to gain that connection. And lastly, I just finished. Thank you all for your patience with this. It does sound like there was an issue with Zoom. We had upgraded the account to 1,000, and it says that it's there, but there was a line of like 580 people to contact Zoom and get some help. So we'll still have it recorded. We'll send it out. You can play it back for anybody else from your orgs that didn't get on, and we'll see what we can do about doing it again and adding some additional information to this. So with that, I think I do have Betsy on here who can go ahead and put us into our breakout rooms. They are set with facilitators, and look forward to continuing to talking with you. And put on your calendars next Friday, same time. We'll have more fun again for MLS Matters. Thanks, everybody.